The massive ship appeared without warning. One moment, Earth's orbit was empty except for satellites and the usual space stations. The next, a vessel larger than anything humans had ever built hung in the sky like a dark cloud. Jack Miller watched the live feed from the command center in Washington, D.C. As a master sergeant with the U.S. Special Forces, he had seen many things in his 20 years of service, but nothing like this. The alien ship looked like a cross between a manta ray and a battleship, with smooth curves that somehow made it more threatening. "They're calling themselves the Drakari," said General Peters, his voice tight. "They've agreed to meet with the United Defense Council in 1 hour." Jack nodded. He checked his rifle out of habit, though he knew it was clean and ready. The M40X was an improved version of a design that had served snipers for over a century. While humanity had developed energy weapons, nothing matched the reliability and precision of a well-made rifle in the hands of a trained marksman. "Miller, you'll be on security detail during the meeting," the general said. "Keep your eyes open, but do not engage unless directly threatened. We need to understand what we're dealing with." 3 hours later, Jack stood at attention in a corner of the grand meeting room. 6 Drakari had arrived via a smaller shuttlecraft. They were tall beings with gray-blue skin that seemed to shimmer under the lights. Their eyes were large and completely black, set in faces that reminded Jack of pictures he'd seen of ancient Egyptian statues. The lead alien, who introduced himself as Commander Xelthrak, spoke perfect English through some kind of translator device. His voice had an odd echoing quality that made the hairs on Jack's neck stand up. "We have observed your world for some time," Xelthrak said, looking at each human representative in turn. "Your species has potential, but lacks proper guidance. The Drakari Empire spans 3 galaxies. We offer you the opportunity to join us." President Kelsey leaned forward. "And if we prefer to remain independent?" The alien made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Independence is an illusion. The universe is divided between those who rule and those who serve. Currently, you are neither. This makes you irrelevant." Jack noticed how the other aliens carried weapons that looked like sleek pistols. One of them caught him staring and tilted its head. "Your protector finds our tools interesting," the alien said to the human delegation. "Perhaps he wonders how they compare to the primitive chemical propellant weapon he carries." Commander Xelthrak glanced at Jack's rifle. "An amusing relic. We abandoned such weapons 10,000 years ago. They are inefficient, inaccurate, and limited by physical projectiles." Jack kept his face neutral, but he felt a spark of anger. He had made confirmed kills at distances these aliens probably couldn't comprehend. His longest shot during the resource wars had been just over a mile, taking down a warlord who thought he was safely out of range. "We offer humanity a simple choice," Xelthrak continued. "Join the Drakari Empire as a servant species, or face extinction. Your technology cannot hope to match ours. Your weapons are obsolete. Your defenses are meaningless." The meeting continued for another hour, with the aliens showing recordings of worlds they had conquered and civilizations they had uplifted through servitude. When they finally left, the room fell silent. "They're giving us 1 month to decide," President Kelsey said, her face pale. "But it's not really a choice, is it?" General Peters waited until the room had cleared except for key military personnel. "We have 1 month to figure out how to fight an enemy with technology centuries beyond ours." Jack stepped forward. "Permission to speak freely, sir." The general nodded. "They may have better technology, but they've already made a critical mistake," Jack said. "They've underestimated us, especially our weapons." "Explain, Sergeant," the president said. "They think our firearms are primitive because they abandoned similar technology. But that means they've forgotten what these weapons can do, and they've forgotten how to defend against them." Jack patted his rifle. "Sometimes the old ways work just fine." The general's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "Miller, I want you to gather our best marksmen. We need to test a theory." The underground bunker buzzed with activity. 1 week had passed since the Drakari ultimatum, and the United Defense Council was working around the clock. Maps covered the walls, and computer screens showed satellite images of Drakari ships moving in Earth's orbit. Colonel Susan Hayes stood at the center of it all. Her gray hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her uniform was crisp despite her having slept only a few hours in the past 3 days. "Conventional warfare is suicide," she said, pointing to footage of a Drakari energy weapon vaporizing a tank during a demonstration they had conducted. "We need to think differently. Fight smarter, not harder." Jack watched from the side of the room. He had been called in for a special briefing, along with 11 other snipers from various military branches. "That's where you come in," Colonel Hayes said, turning to the group. "Project Ghost Protocol. We can't match their technology, but we can use Earth's environment and our specialized skills against them." A woman stepped forward from the group of snipers. "Lieutenant Lisa Martinez, Lunar Defense Force," she said. "With respect, Colonel, what can snipers do against enemies with energy shields and armor that can withstand direct hits from our heavy weapons?" Colonel Hayes smiled. "Dr. Blackwood will explain." A thin man with wild gray hair and thick glasses moved to the front of the room. He carried what looked like a modified rifle bullet in his hand. "The Drakari have a weakness," Dr. Blackwood said, holding up the bullet. "Their shields are calibrated for energy weapons, not physical projectiles. Specifically, they cannot efficiently stop objects moving at certain velocities." He placed the bullet on the table. "I've modified these rounds to travel at exactly the right speed to pass through the gap in their shield frequencies. Their armor is tough but brittle at certain points, like the joints and sensor arrays." Jack picked up one of the bullets, examining it closely. "You're saying we can kill them with a well-placed shot?" "That's exactly what I'm saying, Sergeant Miller," Dr. Blackwood replied. "Their arrogance is our advantage. They've focused all their defensive technology on stopping energy weapons because that's what they use. They've forgotten the simple effectiveness of a high-velocity round fired by a skilled marksman." Colonel Hayes pointed to a map. "The Drakari are establishing ground bases at these locations. They're preparing for full invasion whether we surrender or not. Your job is to target their command structure." Jack looked at the other snipers. Some he knew from past missions. Dawn broke over the Rocky Mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Jack lay perfectly still beneath a camouflage tarp that matched the rocky terrain. 2 miles away, in the valley below, sat the small town of Pine Ridge, Colorado. Population: 2,743. At least that was the number before the Drakari arrived. Through his scope, Jack could see alien soldiers moving through the town. They had rounded up the civilians in the main square, a show of force, just as Colonel Hayes had predicted. "Ghost 1 in position," Jack whispered into his radio. "Elevation 8,400 feet. Wind from the west at 6 miles per hour." One by one, the other team members reported in. Lisa was on a ridge to the north, while the rest of the team had spread out to cover all approaches to the town. "Ghost 2 ready," Lisa's voice came through clearly. "I have eyes on the landing craft. Looks like they're bringing out someone important." Jack shifted his position slightly, focusing his scope on the large shuttle that had landed in what used to be the town park. The door slid open, and a tall Drakari emerged. Unlike the soldiers, who wore standard armor, this one was decorated with glowing symbols and carried what appeared to be a staff of office. "Target identified," Jack said. "High-ranking officer, possibly Sub-Marshal Krvek, based on the intel photos." "Confirmed," replied Colonel Hayes from the command center hundreds of miles away. "That's Krvek. He's one of their war leaders. Take the shot when ready, Ghost 1." Jack took a deep breath and let it out slowly. The distance was 2,186 yards, well within his capabilities, but never an easy shot. He made micro-adjustments for wind speed, elevation, and even the Earth's rotation, factors that affected a bullet's path over such distances. The Drakari leader stepped forward, his energy shield creating a slight shimmer around him. He began speaking to the gathered humans, his amplified voice echoing off the mountains. "People of Earth," Krivek announced, "witness the generosity of the Drakari Empire. Submit, and you will live to serve a greater purpose. Resist." Jack squeezed the trigger. Time seemed to slow as the specialized round left the barrel at 2,700 feet per second. It cut through the mountain air, following the precise arc Jack had calculated. 2.06 seconds later, the bullet passed through the gap in the Drakari shield frequency, exactly as Dr. Blackwood had predicted. Through his scope, Jack watched the bullet strike Krivek directly in the center of his chest. The alien staggered backward, blue-black liquid spraying from the wound. For a moment, he stood frozen in shock, then collapsed to the ground. Chaos erupted in the square. The Drakari soldiers spun in circles, energy weapons raised, but they had no target. Their sensors detected no energy signatures, no sign of where the attack had come from. "Ghost 2, take the second target," Jack ordered. Lisa's rifle cracked from her position. Another Drakari officer fell, a neat hole punched through his head armor. Within 30 seconds, 2 more aliens dropped from precise shots fired by other team members. The Drakari began firing wildly into the mountains, their energy beams scorching rocks and trees, but hitting nothing of consequence. "They can't believe what's happening," Lisa said, her voice tight with controlled excitement. "They have no idea how to respond to this kind of attack." Jack watched as the aliens retreated to their shuttle, dragging their dead with them. They moved with none of the confidence they had shown earlier. Now they hunched, looking over their shoulders, suddenly aware that their advanced technology hadn't protected them. "Ghost Protocol, begin exfiltration," Colonel Hayes ordered. "Move to secondary positions before they bring in air support." As Jack carefully backed away from his shooting position, he heard the colonel addressing someone else at the command center. "Yes, Mr. President. The operation was a success. 4 confirmed kills, including Submarshal Krivek. No human casualties." A pause. "Yes, sir. I believe we found their weakness. They simply don't understand what we can do from a distance." Jack smiled grimly as he made his way down the mountain. The Drakari had just learned their first lesson about human warfare. They had more to learn, and Jack's team would be the teachers. Behind him, he could hear the roar of Drakari ships arriving to search the mountains. Too late. By the time they figured out what had happened, Ghost Protocol would be long gone, preparing for the next strike. The Drakari response came 3 days later. From their ships in orbit, they fired energy weapons at 3 uninhabited areas on Earth, 1 in the Sahara Desert, 1 in Siberia, and 1 in the Australian outback. Each blast left a circle of glass 20 miles wide, a warning of what could happen to populated areas. Jack watched the footage with the rest of Ghost Protocol in their new underground base beneath the Appalachian Mountains. "They're scared," Lisa said, studying the images. "They want us to think they're angry, but this is fear. They don't know where we'll strike next." Colonel Hayes entered the room, her face grim. "The Drakari have deployed special units to hunt us down. They call them Shadow Hunters. Teams on the West Coast have already made contact. These aren't like the regular soldiers. They're trained to track and kill." "Any casualties?" Jack asked. 2 snipers in Oregon. They were spotted before they could take their shots," Colonel Hayes replied. "But Ghost Protocol has inspired similar units worldwide. We have teams operating in every continent now." Dr. Blackwood joined them, carrying a tablet. "The aliens have adjusted their shields, but not enough. My latest calculations show they still can't block projectiles moving at certain speeds. They don't understand the physics of ballistic weapons anymore. They've been using energy weapons too long." Jack nodded. "What's our next target?" Colonel Hayes pulled up a map on the main screen. "Intelligence reports the Drakari have established a command center here, in these mountains. They're coordinating their ground forces from this location. If we can eliminate their command staff, We can disrupt their operations across the eastern seaboard. Jack studied the terrain. Difficult approach. Heavy forest. But there are two ridges that offer clear lines of sight to the facility. We'll split into two teams, Lisa suggested. Team 1 takes the north ridge, Team 2 takes the south. Coordinated shots at exactly the same time. The mission was set for the next day. Jack led his team through the thick forest, moving silently as they had been trained. The hike to the north ridge took 4 hours, but they arrived without detection. Lisa's team reported they were in position on the south ridge, 3 kilometers away. Through his scope, Jack could see the Drakari Command Center. It was a dome-shaped building with alien symbols glowing on its surface. Guards patrolled the perimeter, but they were looking outward, not up at the distant ridges. I count 6 high-ranking officers, Jack whispered. They're gathering for some kind of meeting. Same view from here, Lisa responded. My team has the 3 on the left. You take the 3 on the right. Jack assigned targets to his team members. He would take the lead alien, who wore the most decorated armor. The others would fire simultaneously at his command. On my mark, Jack said, making final adjustments for wind and distance. 3, 2, 1. Mark. 6 rifles fired at the exact same moment. Through his scope, Jack watched as the alien leader's head snapped back, the specialized round finding the gap between helmet and body armor. The other 5 targets fell just as quickly. Before the remaining Drakari could react, both teams were already moving to their extraction points. The mission had taken less than 2 minutes from first shot to retreat. Later, back at the base, they received news from their intelligence sources. The aliens were in disarray. The 6 officers they had eliminated included the regional commander and 5 sub-commanders. Even more significant was what the Drakari were saying among themselves. They can't believe you made those shots, Colonel Hayes told them. According to our translators, Supreme Commander Vrakoros himself has taken notice. He's demanding to know how humans can hit targets with such accuracy from distances their sensors don't even bother to scan. Jack couldn't help but smile. The farther away we are, the safer we are. That's the opposite of what they expected. A junior officer rushed into the room. Colonel, we've intercepted a transmission from the Drakari flagship. Supreme Commander Vrakoros has ordered something called orbital purification of major population centers, starting tomorrow. They're escalating, Mom. The room fell silent. Their successes had bought time and proven humans could fight back, but the aliens still held the ultimate advantage with their ships in orbit. Then we need to hit them where it really hurts, Jack said. We need to take the fight to space. Lisa looked at him with raised eyebrows. And how exactly do snipers operate in space, Jack? He smiled grimly. We find a way. We always do. The ruins of Chicago stretched out like a giant shadow in the early morning light. Once a bustling city of millions, it was now mostly empty. Most civilians had been evacuated to underground shelters after the Drakari threats began. Ghost Protocol used the abandoned buildings as cover, moving from position to position to avoid detection. Jack checked his rifle for the 5th time that hour. The weight of it gave him comfort. For 2 weeks, his team had been striking at Drakari targets across the country, never staying in one place for more than 6 hours. But reports indicated the aliens had changed tactics. Movement 3 blocks east, Lisa whispered through the radio. She was on lookout duty in a half-collapsed office building nearby. I count 5. No, 6 figures, moving differently than regular Drakari soldiers. Jack tensed. Shadow hunters. Everyone maintained position. Radio silence from now on. He watched through his scope as the alien hunters moved through the streets below. Unlike regular Drakari troops, these moved with caution, using cover and scanning buildings with devices that glowed with blue light. Their armor was darker, with fewer markings, designed for stealth rather than show. Jack shifted slightly, preparing to take a shot if needed. Beside him, Sergeant Paul Winters and Corporal Olivia Garcia held their positions, rifles ready. The rest of the team was split between two other buildings, providing overlapping fields of fire. The lead shadow hunter stopped suddenly, holding up a hand. It pointed directly at the building where Lisa was hidden. Jack's blood ran cold. "Lisa, they'd spotted you. Get out now." Too late. Energy beams lanced up from the street, striking the building with devastating force. The structure began to crumble. "Taking fire." Lisa's voice crackled through the radio. "Moving to extraction point B." Jack watched in horror as more energy beams struck the building. "Cover fire," he ordered. "Give her a chance to escape." 3 rifles fired simultaneously. 2 shadow hunters fell, but the others took cover with surprising speed. They were learning human tactics. "We need to move," Jack said. "Paul, Olivia, cover our retreat. Then fall back to the secondary position." Jack led the rest of his team through the building and out a back entrance. They moved quickly through the ruined streets, heading for their emergency extraction point. Behind them, rifle fire echoed between the buildings. They reached the extraction point, an old subway tunnel, just as a military transport arrived to pick them up. "Where are Winters and Garcia?" Colonel Hayes asked as Jack's team boarded the vehicle. Jack looked back at the city, covering our retreat. They should be right behind us. But they weren't. As the transport pulled away, Jack received one final transmission from Paul. "We're surrounded, Sarge." Paul's voice was calm despite the situation. "Olivia's hit bad. We'll hold them as long as we can. Get the rest of the team out." Jack wanted to go back. He even reached for the door, but Lisa stopped him. "They knew the risks," she said softly. "We all do." The ride to their new base in the Badlands was silent. 2 more good soldiers lost. 2 friends who wouldn't be coming home. Jack blamed himself. He should have anticipated the shadow hunters' new detection technology. In the underground bunker, Jack stood apart from the others, checking and rechecking his equipment. Lisa approached him. "This wasn't your fault." "I'm their leader," Jack replied, not looking up. "The responsibility is mine." "You're being reckless," Lisa said, her voice rising. "I've seen it in the last few operations. Taking unnecessary risks, staying exposed too long to get the perfect shot." Jack finally looked at her. "What's your point, Lieutenant?" "My point is that this mission is bigger than your guilt or your need for revenge." Lisa snapped. "We need you focused. We need you alive." They stared at each other for a long moment, neither willing to back down. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. "I didn't ask for this responsibility," Jack said finally. "None of us did," Lisa replied, her voice softening. "But here we are, the last line of defense." Something changed in the air between them. Jack saw Lisa not just as his second-in-command, but as someone who understood his burden, someone who shared it. Before either could speak again, Dr. Blackwood burst into the room, excitement clear on his face. "I've done it," he exclaimed, holding up what looked like an ordinary bullet. "I call it the Ghost Round. It changes its electromagnetic signature mid-flight. The Drakari sensors won't be able to trace it back to the source." Jack and Lisa exchanged a look. Maybe there was hope after all. The Drakari message played on all remaining communication channels worldwide. Supreme Commander Vrakoros, his blue-gray face filling screens everywhere, gave humanity his final ultimatum. "People of Earth, your primitive resistance has been noted. It changes nothing. You have 48 hours to surrender unconditionally, or we will begin orbital bombardment of all major population centers. Your sniper tactics, while temporarily effective, cannot prevent your extinction. Choose wisely." In the war room beneath the Badlands, world leaders and military commanders gathered for what might be humanity's last stand. Jack and Lisa represented Ghost Protocol, standing quietly at the back as plans were discussed and rejected. "The Drakari fleet is our real problem," President Kelsey said. "As long as their ships control orbit, we're just delaying the inevitable." Colonel Hayes nodded. We still have some orbital defense platforms that survived their initial attacks. If we could somehow lower the Void Cleaver's shields, even for a few seconds, we might be able to damage their flagship. Jack stepped forward. Dr. Blackwood has analyzed the Drakari shield technology. There's a way. All eyes turned to him as he explained the plan that would soon be called Operation Long Shadow. The Void Cleaver has external power couplings for its shield generator, Jack said, pointing to enhanced satellite images. They're small, but visible from Earth with the right equipment. If we could hit one with Dr. Blackwood's ghost round, it would create a momentary shield fluctuation. You're talking about making a shot to orbit, General Peters said in disbelief. That's over 100 miles straight up. 27 kilometers. To be exact, Jack replied. With atmospheric adjustments, it's the hardest shot ever attempted. But it's possible from the right location. Lisa brought up a map. Mount Rainier provides the necessary elevation and clear line of sight when the Void Cleaver passes overhead. The ghost round will need to change its signature 3 times during the flight to avoid detection. Silence filled the room as the implications sank in. Even if you make this impossible shot, the president said finally, our remaining orbital platforms would have only seconds to strike. 3.7 seconds, to be precise, Dr. Blackwood added. But that's all they'll need if they target these specific points. He highlighted several areas on the image of the Drakari flagship. The plan was approved. There was no alternative. 24 hours later, Jack climbed the slopes of Mount Rainier. Lisa and 4 remaining members of Ghost Protocol accompanied him, carrying specialized equipment designed by Dr. Blackwood. The modified rifle was heavier than his usual weapon, with a longer barrel and a scope unlike anything ever used before. Satellite feed shows Shadowhunters being deployed worldwide. Colonel Hayes informed them over the radio. They figured out what we're planning. Jack found the perfect spot near the summit. While the others set up a defensive perimeter, he began the complex calculations for the shot. Distance, atmospheric pressure, wind patterns at different altitudes, the Earth's rotation, the speed of the Void Cleaver in orbit, all had to be accounted for. Drakari dropships approaching from the north. Lisa warned, setting up her rifle. ETA 10 minutes. Jack focused on his preparations. This was why he had been selected to lead Ghost Protocol. His ability to make impossible shots under pressure had made him a legend among snipers. But this was beyond anything he had ever attempted. I'll be exposed during the shot, Jack said. I need 3 minutes without moving to make the final calculations. Lisa nodded grimly. You'll get your 3 minutes. The sound of energy weapons echoed across the mountainside as the first Shadowhunters arrived. Lisa and the team engaged them, drawing their attention away from Jack. Void Cleaver moving into position, Colonel Hayes reported. You have 1 shot at this, Sergeant. Jack took a deep breath. The specialized scope showed him what no human eye could see unaided. The tiny power coupling on the underside of the massive alien warship, now directly overhead. In his ear, he could hear the sounds of battle as Lisa and the others fought desperately to buy him time. An explosion rocked the mountain. Someone screamed. Jack blocked it all out. There was only the target, the calculations, and the perfect moment to squeeze the trigger. For Earth, he whispered and fired. The ghost round left the barrel at 3 times the speed of sound, streaking upward through the atmosphere. It changed its electromagnetic signature as programmed, becoming invisible to Drakari sensors. Everyone held their breath, waiting. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then, high above Earth, a tiny flash of light appeared on the underside of the Void Cleaver. The ghost round had found its target. Direct hit, Colonel Hayes shouted through the radio. Shield fluctuation detected. Orbital platforms firing now. Through special binoculars, Jack watched as beams from Earth's remaining defense satellites struck the Drakari flagship. The massive ship shuddered visibly, even from this distance. Secondary explosions bloomed across its hull as weapons systems and engine ports were hit with precise fire. It worked. Jack whispered, almost unable to believe it. "We need to move," Lisa said urgently. "More shadow hunters incoming." As if in response to her warning, energy beams sliced through the air around them. Jack grabbed his rifle and followed Lisa down a narrow path, the rest of the team providing covering fire as they retreated. A massive explosion shook the mountain. Looking back, Jack saw a Drekari shuttlecraft had landed near their former position. A tall figure stepped out, wearing ornate armor that gleamed in the sunlight. "Supreme Commander Vrakoros," Lisa said, recognizing the alien from intelligence briefings. "He came personally." "He's after me," Jack realized. The sniper who damaged his flagship. A blizzard was moving in, thick snow already reducing visibility. Jack saw this as an advantage. The storm would interfere with Drekari sensors. "Get the team to the extraction point," Jack told Lisa. "I'll lead Vrakoros away and meet you there." Lisa grabbed his arm. "That's suicide, Jack. He has energy weapons and advanced armor." "And I have a blizzard and home field advantage," Jack replied with a grim smile. "Go." "That's an order, Lieutenant." Lisa hesitated, then nodded. "Don't be late." She quickly led the remaining team members down the mountain. Jack moved in the opposite direction, deliberately leaving tracks in the snow. He found a position between two large boulders and waited. He didn't have to wait long. Vrakoros appeared through the swirling snow, his massive frame moving with surprising grace. Behind him came 4 shadow hunters, weapons ready. "I know you are here, human sniper," the Supreme Commander called out, his voice carrying over the howling wind. "You have caused me great inconvenience. My ship is damaged, my invasion delayed, all because of an antiquated projectile thrower." Jack remained silent, studying the alien through his scope. The armor was thick, with no obvious weak points. But there was another way. He fired a shot that deliberately missed Vrakoros, striking the snow-covered slope above the alien. The Supreme Commander spun toward the sound, firing his energy weapon at Jack's position. Jack was already moving, circling around to a new vantage point. He fired again, another deliberate miss. Each shot was drawing the alien commander further onto the unstable slope. "Your primitive weapon cannot penetrate my armor," Vrakoros shouted, growing frustrated. "Face me directly, coward." Jack's final position was on a solid ridge overlooking the slope. Below, Vrakoros and his shadow hunters stood on snow that concealed a steep drop-off. "You wanted to see what human weapons can do," Jack said, finally speaking. "Watch carefully." He fired one last time, not at the aliens but at the snow above them. The shot triggered exactly what Jack had planned. An avalanche. Tons of snow and ice rushed down the mountain, engulfing Vrakoros and his soldiers before they could escape. Their energy weapons fired wildly as they were buried under the white torrent. When the snow settled, nothing of the Drekari remained visible. 3 days later, Jack stood with Lisa in the command center, watching as the damaged Drekari fleet withdrew from Earth orbit. Intercepted communications revealed their new assessment of humanity. "They're reporting that Earth should be quarantined rather than conquered," Colonel Hayes said with a smile. "Apparently, we possess incomprehensible long-range precision capabilities that make us too dangerous to approach directly." President Kelsey addressed the room. "The Drekari have retreated, but they may return one day. We need to be ready. We need to advance our technology while maintaining the skills that saved us." Later, Jack and Lisa walked outside the bunker, looking up at the stars. Earth had suffered damage, but humanity had survived. "What will you do now?" Lisa asked. Jack considered the question. "Teach others what we learned. The Drekari won't be the last aliens to underestimate humans." He looked at her. "What about you?" Lisa smiled. "Someone needs to make sure you don't get too reckless with your teaching methods." Jack laughed, a sound he hadn't made in a long time. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in months, it contained hope. Humanity had proven itself against a technologically superior enemy, using skills as old as war itself. And somewhere in the vast database of the Drakari Empire, Earth now carried a new classification. Approach with extreme caution. Indigenous species capable of striking with deadly accuracy from distances previously thought impossible.